All right, looks like we're live. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. I don't do a lot of lives here on YouTube. I used to do a lot of lives on Facebook, but I think I'm going to start doing some more lives here on YouTube just because I seem no offense to the folks who follow me on Facebook, but this I like the vibe I get from folks on YouTube. It seems like they're a little bit more serious and looking to do some pretty cool things in your business. So again, I I appreciate your followers, my followers here, and I guess let me clarify that. I like a lot of people who follow me on Facebook, but I think the problem is that not many of them are people who I would work with, and that's because they're not business owners. I like working with business owners. I like working with entrepreneurs, and many of them know me in contexts that are outside of that. So they maybe know me from in my previous life, in my from high school, or they might know me from previous uh, escapades when I was in the military, or even as a veteran when I was doing veteran service stuff. so um, I think the 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 people that I know through YouTube, I know specifically because I know them through business and through entrepreneurship. So today I really want to talk about really about interviewing and the reason why this is coming up for me today. and the I had a really really good call earlier, but this has been kind of an ongoing thing around interviewing and finding really good people for your organization. So I thought if you guys have questions around this, and I know there are, this is a really tough thing to do and to do well when you're trying to interview someone and you're just trying to ask a bunch of questions. You're trying to get to know them a little bit. And I will tell you this, that your lack of preparation in advance will scream volumes to the interviewee, because they will know that you're not prepared, and you're going to know that you're not prepared because you're going to run out of questions. You're going to run out of things to ask. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. Don't plan on making this a super long video because I want to just kind of get to the meat and potatoes of it. But in order to interview people and really stop and think about why you're interviewing the person, right? Yeah, it'd be great if you could get along with them. It'd be great if you could get to know them a little bit. But at the end of the day, you want them to be the right fit for your organization. And if they're not the right fit, like, what's the point? Even though you can get along with them, it almost makes it more difficult if you had to get rid of them later on. So what I want to talk a little bit about is the framework in terms of how to do that and how I've always done that. Well, how I've done it well. There was plenty of times when I didn't do it well because I was not prepared and I didn't know what questions to ask. And I've definitely gotten better with that over the years. So let me just start out by saying anytime I'm doing an interview, I'm always doing 2 interviews. There's always a minimum of 2. Sometimes there's 3, but always a minimum of 2. The first interview is always a behavior-based interview. The second interview is skill-based. So first one's behavior-based, the second one is skill-based. The reason for that is because if their behavior doesn't align with my core values, how I want to do business, or how I would expect them to behave in a given scenario or a given situation, their skills are really irrelevant, right? Because they may have the best skills, but if they're not going to show up the way that I need them to show up, or if they don't have the same work ethic that I do, or if they are just not if they're just not showing up as an individual, if they have a completely different belief system, it's really going to be hard to keep that person around or even want to work with that individual, no matter what their skill set is. I mean, they may be the best person qualified in terms of doing that from a skills-based perspective, but from a behavior-based perspective, you can't teach people to care. You can't teach people to have a good, solid work ethic. You can't teach people, like, it's just really, those are things that are just really, really difficult to teach. That's the stuff that's kind of have to be ingrained a little bit. I mean, even down to the perspective of someone who has a bad relationship with money or a bad relationship with time. That's really, really hard to teach as an employer. So, and why that would be important is, if you have someone who is showing up uh, let's say that you're hiring someone from a sales perspective, that's really, really tough, especially if they've got a bad relationship with money. Because if they've got a bad relationship with money and you're putting them in a sales situation, that's going to be really, really difficult. It's almost like you're setting them up to fail. So, so the first, when I'm looking at my interviews, I'm always looking at minimum two interviews, and that's going to be first a behavior-based interview, and then secondly, it's going to be a skill-based interview. So when I'm asking or putting together those questions for either interview, for both the behavior-based and the skills-based interview, I go back to the Viper method. Now, the Viper method, for those of you who have maybe watched this channel before, it's based on my next book called The Time Wealthy Advantage, which is going to be scheduled to be released in early 2025. I was actually trying to push it for fourth quarter in 2024, but I'd rather it be right. I'd rather it be good than be done. And it's fairly close to being done, but I'm now making the final tweaks, and I really want it to be good. And I'm really happy with the way it's turning out. So looking at a release in early 2025 for the Time Wealthy Advantage. So if that's something you're interested in, an early release copy, just drop a comment in the chat, and I will certainly get you. I will show you how to get early access copies to the Time Wealthy Advantage. But here's the premise, right? So you got vision, infrastructure, process. So the Viper method: vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. So let's talk a little bit about vision. Remember, vision encompasses two pieces: your personal vision and your business vision. Remember, personal vision has to come first, because when you create a business vision before you create a personal vision, remember, you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And that's what we're trying to avoid, right? We want this business to support us. We want this business to deliver our lifestyle for us. So, it's good that we like to feel productive. It's good to feel that you're in a job, in a position that you really like to do. I love being a strategist. I love working for small business owners. But you know what? At the end of the day, I like going home and not having to think about work. And I love what I do. Don't get me wrong. But there's also, I love it because I don't have to do it 20 out of 24 hours in a day. So when you're looking at business vision is defined in three ways, and that is by core purpose, core values, and your client avatar. Core purpose, core values, and your client avatar. So when you're thinking about core purpose is specifically what it is that you do. Like, what is the business about? And I mean being really, really, really specific, because you have to think about, this is almost where you want to exclude other things, because otherwise you'll just end up being very, very fragmented in whatever business that you're in. So I know I get a lot of pushback from this, especially from entrepreneurs and especially from business owners who are like going out there and flexing that hustle muscle, but it just ends up being a trap. And those tend to be the people who are not experiencing the levels of success that they could be. And I've noticed this a lot. Yeah, they might be making a lot of money, but their life is a mess. Or they might be making a lot of money, but their marriage is a mess. They might be making a lot of money, but they never see their kids. We're talking about success here in all areas of life, not just financially. So you got to keep in mind, the wealthiest people out there, what are they buying back? They're buying convenience. They're buying back their time, so they can use their time in as many ways as they possibly can that suits them. So, Elon Musk isn't out there building rockets by himself. No, he's got really, really smart people, not only designing them, he's got other people building them, he's got other people launching them, he's got other people doing all the things that, quite frankly, he just isn't. It wouldn't be the best use of his time to do, right? His best use of his time is really, it seems to be in promotion and public relations, and getting out there and making a lot of waves in a lot of different areas, right? So that's really what he's good at. So let's stop and think about that from the perspective of what business are you specifically in, to the exclusion of everything else. If you just say, I'm in real estate, that's not specific enough. If you say that you're in single family residential properties on the south side of this specific town in this school district, I can get behind that, right? That's real specific. I would almost even want to dial it in even further. But the more you can dial that in, don't be afraid to niche down. Don't be afraid to niche down. There is a reason why they say the riches are in the niches, because when you niche down, when you stop trying to be everything to all people, that's when you can really start to make a lot of money. And it also becomes really a lot easier to market to the one of the other C's, which is your client avatar, your ideal client avatar. Who specifically do you want to work with? Because the more specific you can be over here on your core value, on your core purpose, meaning what's business are you specifically in, your ideal client avatar, that's the person that you want to serve. That's the person who is, or it might be not necessarily a person. It could be a couple. It might be a group. But specifically, who is it you want to work for? And these are the people who they are easy to work with. They make you the most amount of money, and they cause you the least amount of hassles. Who is that Who is that ideal client? Who is that ideal person, or that ideal group, or that ideal couple? Who is that? And define that and give them a name and be really, really specific about that. Now, I talked about core purpose. I talked about your ideal client avatar. Now, I'm also talking about your core values. Remember, when you're looking at business vision, you're looking at 3 C's. Now, again, this is all in the context of interviewing and finding the right person in your organization, right? So let's stop and think about for that in that context of what is your core values. Now, your core values, remember, the core values are just an extension of you, because your business is just an extension of you, right? It stands to reason. So if your business is just an extension of you, then your personal core values are going to come into your business core values. It stands to reason. There's no getting around that, because your business is part of you. So the way that I stop and think about my core values is, I think that the core values are really, we learn those from our excesses in life. So think about that for just a moment. When you're looking at your core values, it's easy to think of those in terms of excesses. So your excesses might be when you're looking at, let's say that something that's been excessively good, right? You might think of the birth of one of your children. You might think of an event that was just so amazing you wish you could replicate it in some way. Maybe a wedding, your wedding day, or maybe a party that you're at, or maybe an experience with someone that just blew your mind away. All right, the outer edges of that. The reason that was so profound for you is because it probably aligned really well with one of your core values. Let's look at the other end of the spectrum, where you had a really negative event, right? Maybe it was a loss of a friend, and the reason that you lost that friend is because they were wandering off the reservation and they were heading down a path that you just couldn't follow, right? And the reason you couldn't follow them is because it violated a core value for you, right? Maybe it was a person you once worked with. Maybe it was a bad boss, or again, maybe it was a bad relationship, or whatever it was. But that excess on the opposite side, the reason that was so hurtful for you is because it violated a core value, right? So when in the context of our excesses, from excessively good to excessively bad, at the outer edges of that is what helps define our core values. So use those as an example to help define the core values for you personally, and then think about this in the context of why that would matter to you in business. So when you're thinking about that from the context of core values, you might stop and think, okay, hang on just a second. So if this is in the context of core values, why would this be important for me, right? If I'm going to hire someone, why would it be important for me to make sure that they are this, right? And I don't want to throw out a core value because I don't want to say that should be something, but a very common core value that I see out there is honesty, right? Now, if it's really going to be truly honest, okay, I want you to think about that. If a core value of honesty is really, really, truly important for you, make sure that you're honest with yourself about that. Are you really going to be honest all the time? I mean, 100% honest. Because sometimes you might say, well, no, maybe it's more important for me to be in integrity, right, than it is honesty. And I know that sounds weird, but for a lot of people, that's true. Is that I would rather do something that's in alignment, right? Think about, I look at integrity as being in alignment, like you do what you say you're going to do. But if someone's saying honesty, like, hey, if someone asks you a tough question, are you always going to be very honest with them, even though the answer might not, it might impact another core value of yours that you might say, well, I don't really know that I want to tell, tell people every little aspect of my business if I'm being honest. Sometimes it may not be none of their business, right? Especially if they're asking you about personal things around your family and everything else. So there are limits to where that honesty would go, right? And which makes sense, right? You got to have some boundaries in place. So that's why I'm saying honesty is good, but as long as it doesn't violate another boundary. And again, boundaries are good. They're not bad. They're not bad things. So you just have to be careful in terms of how you craft and how you put together these core values that really, really do actually matter. Don't just put them together and think you're going to cram them together in an afternoon. They take some time. So once you have your core values, your core purpose, and your ideal client avatar figured out and really clear, now you can start to interview around those things and ask people behavioral questions around the topic that's important to you around their behaviors, right? So, and I do that using metaphors, saying, okay, so let's say metaphorically you were working with a really tough customer. Would that be something that how would you handle a very difficult customer? Give me an example, right? Let's say a customer comes in and starts treating you really badly. What would you do? And give them license to answer that. Don't lead the witness, right? Give them an ability to answer that question. How about if you were asking another behavioral type question, say, how would you expect me to respond to you if you showed up 30 minutes late, right? And you can ask questions like that, especially if being timely is important to you, and other questions that you could ask around that. But here's the thing. Again, those first initial questions should be all behavioral based in terms of tell me about a time when. And those questions should be based around what your deliverable is to your ideal client avatar and what your core purpose is of your business. So this does take time to put together and to be intentional. And, most behavioral based interviews can be around 30 to 45 minutes, and they should be very conversational. Okay. And you're kind of getting a rough idea if they think very big picture, if they're really detailed in their answers, if they tend to lean more on answering questions around having a good relationship with people, or if they're really more into inanimate objects, if they're really more into things, right? How they land on those scales. So that's the first interview. The second interview is always based around skills, because skills can be taught. So if you're thinking about asking them questions around their skills, that's when you start thinking around, okay, well, what tell me about some things in whatever the job is, right? There's so many different skills that they can have that's important to you. It's also going to be based on the job. Maybe it does make sense for you to see how they would respond to an email. Maybe it would make sense, and you have them, hey, go ahead and email me before our second interview. Go ahead and email me something that would respond back to an upset customer, right? That would be a good skills-based sort of test. And you can ask them all sorts of other specifics related to their skills. I do believe that most skills can be taught. I think it's really, really hard to teach people the behaviors that you want them to have. So yes, of course you can guide them. Yes, of course you can coach them. But that's why I always like to do behavioral-based interviews first, and then skills-based interviews second. So that is all I have for that. So I'm going to go ahead and land the plane. This is, I don't want to make these videos too super long. Can't believe I've already been on here for 20 minutes, but hopefully it didn't seem that long to you. But if you've got some questions, jot them down. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Some good questions that maybe you have asked in the past or have been asked in the past. And then you can get a little bit more specific in terms of what are some other questions. Maybe let's start getting a dialogue going about what other questions that maybe you have heard or have thought of, or maybe some questions again that you just know you need to stay away from. And that could be a whole other video in and of itself. All right. All right. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you guys next time.